You've spelunked into the Matt Cave. Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, it's going to be a lot of basketball. So I'll break down the Utah Jazz trades, and there were many. I'll break down what's wrong with BYU, and the problems go pretty deep with this team. And then also update everybody on where the Utes, as well as the Aggies, stand as we get into the home stretch of college basketball before March Madness begins. And then I'll also update everyone on where the Utah Mammoths stand as we are now into the Olympic freeze, the Olympic break, whatever you want to call it. I'll talk about their previous, truncated week before all the games began and what we can look forward to when we get back. So I'll talk about all of that today. Time permitting, maybe some video game chatter at the end. But hey, thank you all so much for being here. As always, like, comment, subscribe, updates, wherever it is, however you listen, they do help out a ton. You all have been so great to me thus far, and I hope you continue to be good to me as we keep going on. And that's really it. You can find me on Facebook, YouTube, the Matt Cave Podcast, Instagram as well. And let's just jump into it. So first, let's start with BYU. Let's break down what's wrong with the Cougars. So they are on a 3-game losing streak. They have lost to, or 4-game losing streak. They have lost to Arizona, number 1, only by 3. Okay. Kansas by 8. They came back and almost won that game. And then they lost a clunker against Oklahoma State. And then they lost again at home against Houston, where they were never really all that close. So what's wrong with this team? Well, the easy, lazy response is they just expect AJ DeBonsa to do everything. That's the easy, lazy, you're not looking at anything response. And that's what I've seen in a couple of places, and it's just plain wrong. What's wrong with this team is they don't make their free throws. That's really, if you look at the game against Houston, they shot 57% from the stripe. The worst offender of this was AJ DeBonsa. He was 7 of 12 from the free throw line. Yeah, that's not going to get it done. If BYU shoots even roughly better than that, if they shoot the same at the free throw line that Houston shot, which is 80%, that would have brought it up to like 21 or 22 free throws made. That makes a difference. That brings the game closer. It makes the other players tighter. So that does make a difference. The other thing is turnovers. Richie Saunders, I don't know what's happened to him over the last few games, but he's disappeared. He no longer looks like a lock to be in the NBA. In this game in particular, he only scored 7 points. When you have 3 guys on your team that you rely on to get buckets, and he goes 1 for 8 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3, that's inexcusable, especially for a senior leader on this team. It's inexcusable. So that's a big problem they're having. Kennard Davis has forgotten how to shoot the ball as well. He's supposed to be that 4th sneaky option for the team. He scored 5 points on 2 of 9 from the field, 1 of 7 from deep. BYU shot 36% from deep, which, if it weren't for AJ DeBonsa and Rob Wright, oh my goodness, it would have been a horrid night for BYU. They also got out-rebounded. Fine. Whatever. BYU's a small team. That's always going to happen. But you don't hit your free throws. One of your big 3 just has disappeared over the course of 2.5 weeks. And to be fair, against Kansas, Richie Saunders was the reason they came back. I'll be fair there. But in big-time basketball, which is where BYU is now, that's where they want to be, you have to show up game in and game out. There's no off games. There's no breaks. And when you have AJ DeBonsa on your team, there's a target on your back. You are the hunted. You're not the hunter. So you have to be on from tip until the final whistle. And this team just isn't. AJ DeBonsa shows up pretty much every game. Rob Wright, he's starting to as well. Richie Saunders? No. Kennard Davis? No. And then the rest of the team are just kind of roster filler. It's a harsh thing to say, but it's the truth. They're just kind of there to be there. None of them are real threats. Kibakita, he's not offensively inclined. He's just a big block guy. He had 3 against Houston. But overall, this team is very, very flawed. And they were able to cover it up early on in the season, but the other coaching staffs and players are paid as well. They figured something out with BYU, and now everything's falling apart. Another big issue is assists. They only had 11 in this game. On the season, they average 14.8. The ball freezes. There's a black hole on the court every game. And that flies in the face of the style of play that Kevin Young wants to run. So there is a black hole on the court. Who is the black hole? I'm thinking it's Rob Wright again. He only had 1 assist against Houston. And I mentioned this at the beginning of the season in my preview for this team, is Rob Wright is kind of the Achilles heel of the big three. I did not think Richie Saunders was going to disappear in the manner that he has. I don't think anybody had. But in big moments and big games, Richie Saunders outside of that Kansas game is just not there. He's just not there. The only guy that really wants to take over the game is DeBonsa. And that can be okay if the other 4 guys are present and are ready to get a pass and make a bucket. So that there's a lot wrong with this roster. It is not deep at all. All the money went to the big three. There's nobody else that can really play. The other ones that they were expecting to contribute, Dawson Baker tore his ACL. Okay, you can't really predict for that. Kennard Davis, he was supposed to be the 4th guy. He's disappeared altogether. He can't play in big-time basketball. That's what we've learned. And so when we look at this roster, it's A.J. DeBonsa, Rob Wright, maybe Richie Saunders, depending on the day, and then just a bunch of jerseys. There is no deep run for this team, as far as I'm concerned. I was still hopeful after that Kansas game. They came back, they played hard, they almost clawed back into it. But then the very next game, you go and you lose to Oklahoma State? Are you kidding me? And then you follow that up with a stinker against Houston, scoring only 66 points. I get it, Houston is one of the best defensive teams in the country. You're supposed to be one of the best offensive teams in the country. Currently, after the Houston game, they're still top 25 in points per game at 85.8. BYU's defense is also another issue. Nothing was fixed from last season. They will allow you to shoot. They just hope you miss. That's really BYU's defensive philosophy right now. They're going to let you shoot. Boy, I hope you miss. So there's a lot wrong with this team. A lot wrong. Is Kevin Young the coach that can fix it? Who knows? Really, I don't know. It's only he's not even 2 years in. So the jury it's way too soon to say anything about him. But right now, it's not looking good. His team keeps collapsing in on itself. A.J. DeBonsa looks great. He's going to be a top pick in the draft. Rob Wright, off and on. He's more on than off. And then Richie Saunders is just gone, man. I've lost hope for him. If we look at the other games here. So let's just do a quick peek at the other games for Richie Saunders. Against Oklahoma State, 20 points. Okay. 4 of 10 from 3. He did not get to the line once. That's a problem. He also had 4 personal fouls. So I'm just going to keep continuing to go through here in these losses about Richie Saunders because I feel like it's okay for me to kind of poke and prod at him because it was a big deal that he came back. Yeah, against Kansas, he led the team in scoring. Cool. Now let's go to the game against Arizona. Let's take a peek, see here. 18 points on 7 of 11 shooting, only 2 free throws. Got to do better than that. Again, the team against Arizona shot 12 of 19 from the line. They make 4 more of those. They hit 16 of 19 from the stripe. They win against Arizona. So, in these last, 2, 4, 8 games, that's not enough time to fix what's wrong. You're not going to miraculously start hitting 85% of your free throws. Unless that's all you do for practice, which they might need to do. But A.J. DeBonsa is not making free throws very well. And that's not good. He's the one that gets to the line the most. Rob Wright, he hits his free throws. Richie Saunders doesn't get to the line enough. And those are the 3 under the microscope. And they should be under the microscope. So moving forward, they have to win the games they're supposed to win, like that Oklahoma State game. They were supposed to win that one. But they gave up almost 100 points. So they have to beat Baylor. They have to beat Colorado. They have to beat Central Florida, West Virginia, and Cincinnati to even have a hope of getting an automatic bid into the big dance. Because right now, they are sitting firmly on the bubble. They haven't done enough. Their marquee wins against Wisconsin, Miami, Clemson, those aren't looking very good anymore. But their losses against Texas Tech, they were not competitive. Against Arizona, they were only competitive late. Against Kansas, only competitive late. Against Oklahoma State, not really competitive, even though they lost by 7. And then against Houston, not really all that competitive either. So there's a lot wrong. You can tell I'm kind of fired up about this just because they were supposed to be so much more, but they're turning into basically what BYU has always been my entire life, except for the last few years under Kalani Sitake, which is a lot of preseason hype, the quest for perfection, other stuff like that, and then they just fall flat on their face. And I'm sick of seeing it. I was hoping to be different under Kevin Young. Turns out it's not really that different. It's starting to be different under Kalani Sitake, but they fell flat on their face in the 2 big games of the season. Well, maybe it's just the more things change, the more they stay the same. Speaking of that, Utah State is still the class of the Mountain West. They did escape a scary one against Wyoming, 85-83, but they did earlier in the week march in to New Mexico and win by 20. They beat the third best team in the Mountain West by 20. Yeah. So Utah State is going to be just fine. Coming up, they've got Fresno State, they've got Memphis. Memphis should be a pretty tough one. I know their record isn't the best, but it should be a good one. And then, like the rest of them, they're going to be favored in. They still have another game against San Diego State in California. They have a home game against Grand Canyon, I guess, in Logan. So that one should be fine. And then they wrap up the season at home against New Mexico. So there's still some tough games left, but Utah State is the class of the Mountain West still. They had a couple of hiccups, but they had hiccups early enough in the season that they've kind of figured out what needs to be done, and they're doing it. So that they're kind of the exact opposite of BYU. BYU is unraveling. Utah State's just getting better. So good stuff coming out of Logan. And then Utah, I mean, at least you can watch basketball games, I guess. They lost to Arizona State. They lost to Oklahoma State. They lost to Kansas. Everybody was expecting that. Only by 12, though. So that's not bad. Their points per game are tied for 156th in the country. Rebounds are 296th in the country. Assists per game, they're even worse than BYU, which is really tough to do. And they allow 80 points per game. So there's a lot that's wrong with this team, but Terrence Brown is still worth the price of admission. He's still fun to watch. It's just the rest of the game isn't. So the rest of the season, I mean, coming up, they've got Houston. I mean, we'll see what happens in that one, but it's not going to be pretty. Houston plays really good defense. And then Cincinnati, West Virginia, Central Florida, Iowa State, Arizona State, Colorado, Baylor. So they only have 2 games left against ranked teams, which is the good news. So the rest of those games is kind of a barometer for where Utah is going to kind of expect to be here in the next couple of years. I don't know. Nobody knows in this new landscape of college athletics if a one-season turnaround can A, happen, and then B, be sustainable. Just look at BYU. So we'll see what happens the rest of the year for Coach Jensen and then into next season. What he can pull out of the transfer portal, what he can do on the recruiting trail, and what he can do in talent development. That's another piece in this modern era of college athletics. Coaching and development still matters. It's just, it doesn't matter in the way it used to, which means you're not probably going to see the fruits of your labor at your school, but you still have to develop the kids because that's your job. So there's your state of the union, I guess, in college basketball here in Utah. BYU is just collapsed. We'll see if they have it in them to bounce back. Odds are not very good if you're not hitting your free throws. Utah is the bottom of the Big 12. I didn't think it would be this bad, especially in those performances against BYU, but maybe BYU just wasn't that good to begin with. And Utah State, the class of college basketball here in the state of Utah. All right, let's move on to the Utah Jazz. They finally made some deals, and they made deals that were not, I mean, they did make deals that were contract buyouts like they've always done, accepting second-round draft picks to spend money. So they did do that a lot. But they also made a deal that signals the rebuild is coming to an end. So I'll get to that trade last. I want to talk about the other stuff because there's a lot of confusion around why they would do this. Basically, what they're doing with these contract buyouts and accepting rights is they're collecting second-round picks. Sure, second-round picks don't mean anything anymore. Not that they ever meant much to begin with. They're just trade chips. Because with the second round in the NBA draft, it's like the 6th and 7th round in the NFL draft where you just kind of throw a dart at the dartboard, say, yep, that's our guy. Let's see if we can get anything out of him. That's what the second round is in the NBA draft now. So what this really is Utah doing a few things. First, it's showing that they are a willing and capable trade partner in the NBA because there are teams in the NBA that people just do not deal with. They just, like the Heat, for example. The Miami Heat don't really make trades. Nobody wants to deal with Pat Riley. The New Orleans Pelicans, nobody really wants to trade with them. You know, so teams like that, those front offices, nobody wants to deal with them. So people have called the Jazz the past few seasons and specifically and saying, all right, we need to make this wheel and deal. What can we do? And the Utah Jazz have been receptive to it, which is good. That means they have good standing in other front offices. And it's not like people look at Danny Ainge and go, oh, we're going to get fleeced. Let's not talk to the Jazz. He's been a part of it. So that's the first thing they're doing. They're building good rapport. The second thing they're doing is they're getting a bunch of trade exceptions. Without getting too far into it, it's basically money that is set aside that you can include on a deal that does not come back against the salary cap. So I hope that made sense. That's about as simple as I think I can make it. And so they have a bunch of money like that from the Lonzo Ball deal, from the Jared Kushner deal, or not Jared Kushner, the John Conchar deal. That is what they got. So they got player trade exceptions. So extra money is what they got. And that's really what it is. They also freed up a bunch of roster spots because they want to see what they have from their G League team to see if there's anything there for them to be able to bump up to the NBA. So Tank Note, this is kind of the final season for Tank Note. So they're going to, Lauri Markkanen's going to have a really bad case of the flu. Don't be surprised if Jaren Jackson has back spasms for the rest of the year. Maybe Keontae George has a hangnail and has to sit out. So don't be surprised to see that this season. Everybody's expecting it from the Jazz. The Jazz have pulled that same song and dance for the last 4 years and expect it to continue this year. But they have accelerated this, air quotes, rebuild. You can't really rebuild with something that was not all that great to begin with. Yeah, the regular seasons were fun. They were winning a bunch of games. You get to playoff time, and you're not getting past the second round. That's not something you kind of tear down. That's how I view it anyway. So the Jazz are doing things. They're taking steps in the right direction. We'll see how that direction plays out. I was as surprised, if not more so, than everybody in the NBA that they made a trade that signals the end of a rebuild. So the goal for the rest of this season is to continue the tank, do what you can to retain that top 8 protected pick. That was a really weird way of me saying that. Top 8 protected pick. And then hopefully land in A.J. DeBonsa, a Boozer twin, one of those guys at the top. Darren Peterson is their goal, I think, to play alongside Keontae George in the backcourt. I think A.J. DeBonsa could do it too. And then just have this lineup that is rather scary because if you get one of those rookies, you still have the developing of Ace Bailey. Ace Bailey is the youngest player in the NBA, I think. If he's not the youngest, he's very close. So he's still developing. He's shown flashes of what he can do. He's getting very solid defensively, which is a weird thing to say because this is one of the historically bad teams in the NBA on defense. He's learning his offensive game and how he fits in, and he's only going to get bigger too. So Ace Bailey will continue to develop. If they can get an A.J. DeBonsa, a Darren Peterson, a Boozer, it will accelerate this rebuild into something that is kind of scary. Because if you look at the landscape of the Western Conference right now, and you look at the standings, at the top, you obviously have the very best, right? You have Denver, you have San Antonio, and Oklahoma City. Those are going to be the top. But if you look at the other teams have very big flaws. Golden State is a retirement home, and it only got worse with Jimmy Butler's injury. Portland isn't very good. Their rebuild's not going great. The Clippers just shipped out James Harden, so there's not really much going on there. The Memphis Grizzlies, obviously, we know what's happening there. Ja Morant is the only one left from that team that they thought they had something with. The Dallas Mavericks just shipped out Anthony Davis. The new regime basically saying, yeah, it was a mistake. We're just going to try to rebuild from here. And then you have the Houston Rockets, who are good, but how long does Kevin Durant have? And when he does ultimately move on, whether that's to another team or a retirement, how does the rest of the team look? When you remove a Hall of Famer, it's never easy to do. The Lakers are a mess. I know they're 32-19, but outside of like Luka Doncic, who can't stay healthy, LeBron James he's winding down his career. What else is in LA that really scares what the Jazz are going to have? Minnesota is a conundrum. They've got the Ant-Man, Anthony Edwards, who I think is one of the best players in the NBA. But then they have the monstrosity contract that is Rudy Gobert. We all know Rudy from his time in Utah. The dude cannot play offense at all. And then what's going on with the rest of the roster? They shipped out Mike Conley, but that was to get rid of his contract, and then they're going to bring him back. But he is also coming to the end of his NBA career. What else is in Minnesota that would really scare this new-look Jazz team? Not much. So when you look at the Western Conference, it's Oklahoma City, it's San Antonio, and it's Denver. Those are the top three moving forward. But then when you look at the rest that are going to like really compete with Utah for those 4 through 6 seeds in the playoffs to avoid the play-in, Houston, Los Angeles, Minnesota, and who knows, maybe Phoenix has found something. But Golden State is only going to get worse. Draymond Green can't play defense anymore, so he just pushes people around until he gets tossed. Stephen Curry is old. He can't sustain over a full season to get his team into the playoffs. Once they get into the playoffs, Steph Curry's going to be unstoppable like he always is. But then Portland, the Clippers, Grizzlies, Mavericks, Pelicans, and Kings. I mean, the Jazz just accelerated to a point where they are going to be top 6 in the Western Conference. With just one trade, really. That's impressive work, any way you slice it. So when we look at these deals, it's really enticing to think that there's hope. That the Jazz have a direction. They have an identity of who they want to be. And so if we look at that starting 5, that potential starting 5 of Lauri Markkanen, Keontae George, Jaren Jackson Jr., Ace Bailey, or, AJ DeBonsa, Darren Peterson, whoever from the draft if they can get them, and Walker Kessler, that's a scary starting 5. And then you have Isaiah Collier coming off of the bench. That's pretty good. That's pretty good and kind of scary. Now, the defense is going to be another issue to solve altogether. Walker Kessler and Jaren Jackson Jr. are going to solve a lot of the problems the Jazz have, because right now they just play Olay defense. A guy starts going to the hoop and they just go Olay and let him by. So that's what they're running right now. And what they gave up to get Jaren Jackson Jr. could be a lot. The players, not so much. So Georges Niang didn't suit up for the Jazz once. The minivan's gone. Taylor Hendricks is just a very sad picture of what might have been had he not get injured. Kyle Anderson is just a salary match. And then Walter Clayton Jr., just there wasn't room for him on the roster. With how Isaiah Collier developed and Keontae George's takeoff, there's no room for Walter Clayton Jr. in this particular inn. The trade of the picks, it's the Lakers 2027 first-round pick. We were hoping it was going to be a good pick, but then the Lakers got Luka, and so that pick isn't going to do anything for us. So, yeah, ship that out. It's top 4 protected. Top 4 protected for LA, though. So if they get a top 4 pick in the 2027 draft, it goes back to LA. 2027 first-round pick, most favorable of the Jazz, Cavaliers, and Timberwolves. With the direction the Jazz are going this next season, they're not going to be tanking. And so that pick is going to land in the 20s at best, like low 20s. And then the only one that is worth anything, really, is Phoenix's 2031 pick. But that's 5 years out. Who knows? Like, who knows where the Suns are going to be? Who knows what that draft class is going to be? And then the 2027 draft is not slated to be a very good draft. So the Jazz kind of jettisoned a bunch of picks that were ballooning what they actually had in their coffers for an all-star and a defensive player of the year candidate. They also got Vince Williams Jr. Now, this could be the sneaky big pickup, other obviously than Jaren Jackson Jr. Vince Williams is a very good perimeter defender. And I trust Tony Jones as the Athletic. And I read his review of the trade. And I'm actually kind of excited for Vince Williams Jr. He's a perimeter guy who has the potential to be a lockdown perimeter defender without the attitude or the technical foul waiting to happen that is others of his ilk, like a Lou Dortz or a Brooks. I can't remember his first name. Dylan Brooks. So this trade is good. It signals positive things for the future of the Jazz. And you know what? I'm here for it. Finally, 4 years later, I'm on board with the vision this team has. That front line that could happen of Walker Kessler, Lauri Markkanen, and Jaren Jackson Jr. is scary. Because Lauri Markkanen is going to play, it's called the 3, small forward / position, whatever you want to call it. That is going to be awesome. So the only other thing to be wary about with this potential starting 5 is where are the assists coming from other than Keontae George? Because if you look at Lauri Markkanen, he averages like 2.4 assists per game. Jaren Jackson Jr. is even worse, 1.8, I believe. Walker Kessler is not really a pass guy. So it's Keontae George, and then you're going to hope that you land a Darren Peterson who can move the ball very well, or it's Ace Bailey. That's a little bit scary. So overall, everybody around the league, except for at ESPN, naturally, because ESPN hates the Jazz, is giving this a B+ to an A. My grade is an A. This signals the end of the tank. This signals that the Jazz are going to start trying to win again. And I'm very excited to see what Will Hardy can do with a roster when he's not held back by the front office. Where the front office finally tells him, you're going to go win, and we need you to win a lot. I'm very excited to see what Will Hardy can do in that environment. All right, so not enough time for me to talk about video games here to wrap up the episode. I just wanted to mention the Overwatch 2 rebrand back into Overwatch. The demise and the decline of the Overwatch game is very sad. It was screwed up by money-grubbing W words at the top of Activision Blizzard who had no idea what they were doing. They just saw dollar signs and they wanted to see number go up. Overwatch could have been one of the best, and it was for a while, one of the best multiplayer games ever. And now it's a punchline in gaming. And they've done the HBO Max, HBO whatever rebrand now, which is just another meme. And it just makes me sad. It does. I enjoyed the 6 versus 6 gameplay. 2 tanks, 2 healers, 2 DPS. They went to the 5-1. Just not as much fun. It's just you kill the 1 tank and then you win. That's not fun. And even before that, at the end of the 6v6 era, it was whoever can knock down shields fastest. And that can get frustrating, but it opens you up to counterplay, right? Can you get around the shields to get to the back line, to get to the healers? Are you good enough? Are you skilled enough to do that? Now it's just everybody pile on the tank and then just do the rest. It's not as much fun. So I did want to talk a little bit about that, just kind of weep for the state of Overwatch and just how far it's fallen. And yeah, so that's the episode this week, everybody. Thank you all so much for being here. And I will see you all next week when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.